This book, Heart Lamp, will equip you with the power to identify whether a man is really a victim or if he is playing a victim card. Hello, all, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to give you all a hook before I start, which I think I did. And yeah, before we get there, the last time around we discussed the movie Love Insurance Company and what makes it worth watching, and essentially how the screenplay could have been better. This time we'll discuss the book Heart Lamp by Banu Mushtaq and what makes the book a must read. More about the book. This is a short story collection in Kannada translated to English by Deepa Bhasthi, and this book went on to win the International Booker Prize 2025. Both the translator and the author are female, and yeah, that's about it. And you can go on watch this video without reading the book because I will not be giving any major spoilers, and I'll only give you the reasons to read this book. So yeah, let's dive into it. Point number one. Obviously, straight off the bat, if you read the summary, you will understand that these stories are about women. But the most surprising and intriguing thing here is that these stories are not about the women you expect them to be. As a filmmaker, as a writer, as a reader, I'm surprised as to how the book begins somewhere and it ends up being somewhere else you barely expect it to be, at least 8 out of 10 times. These are not thrillers, mystery suspenses, or anything, but these are everyday stories, and they still surprise you. And I think the magic of this book, these stories, are exactly that. You know, a lot of times the protagonist may be a passive character in the story. He or she may not have the central conflict, but it is still surprising as to how that central conflict of someone else affects them towards the end of the story. And I think that's a master stroke. You know, take for example, there's this story called Red Lungi about circumcision of so many boys in the mohalla. And you know, all through the book you read about how how when poor boys get circumcised, it is not always hygiene, and you know how it may affect them. And suddenly the book becomes about the mothers of those boys who are getting circumcised and not the boys themselves. You know, you read through their pain, and yet the story is not about them. It is surprising. And there's this story about this man's love for gobi manchuria and how it affects a random lawyer in the mohalla, and that's very interesting again. And yeah, there are these stories about the mutawali, or the head of the masjid, and how being the masjid and how being the head of the masjid affects the woman in the family. And yeah, and all this make the book very interesting. And point number two, I may sound a bit insensitive when I say this, but these stories are not about human trafficking, gang rapes, or acid attacks, or any of such inhuman things. But these stories are about women in everyday life, through their everyday life, where the patriarchy is internalized, and it shows in the smallest of everyday things and all. And yeah, and that is why I said my family should read this book. Not just my family, our families should read this book, because the book will help you understand where and why the power dynamics began and end in the families, and how and why they begin in the first place, and how envy and jealousy are one of the most important founding stones for disturbances in the family. And it is this envy and jealousy that often leads to the power dynamics in the family and a fight for control. And yeah, you should read this book because see from your own examples as to how envy and jealousy affect the people. So take for example, there is this story about one woman who comes into a family as the eldest daughter-in-law. She is very happy when she gets married, and she comes to this house where her husband has his mother and father alive, his three sisters, three brothers, and all their responsibilities come to this woman, and she kind of becomes the mother after their own mother. And though she's very happy, she's very accommodating, she's very loving, after a few years she suddenly starts acting crazy, acting angry, acting all sorts of things. She splits the brothers, and and one of the and her husband attributes it to her menopause, and maybe that is why she's acting that way. But if you dig into the story a bit more, you understand why and where her shift happens, and the core reason for it is envy or jealousy. I'm saying that these people are not bad by birth or evil by birth, but circumstances tend to make them bad in certain ways. And this book will identify as to why people are behaving a certain way. You should know about the story of this woman. Or for suppose take two women of the same family. One woman, though she is rich and she has a four-wheeler car and all, but she can't go out on her own. Firstly, because she can't drive, and secondly, she needs the husband's permission to use the car, because he is the one who will give her a driver and tell her to go. And now this other woman in the family who can go anywhere she wants, because one, she doesn't need her husband's permission, and two, she can fucking drive her own car. And and naturally, wouldn't that make the other woman a bit envious, a bit jealous? I'm not saying, see, I'm not saying the people are bad and all, because if people are all so good, why are these stories of sacrifice so famous? Sacrifice is a difficult thing, and sacrifice is an act where we put our self interests aside, and not everyone does that. And yeah, as you are reading this book, it will help you understand and identify the family dynamics, the power dynamics, and why people turn against one another. And yeah, and the third point, which is our hook. This book will equip you with the power to identify whether a man is really a victim or if he's playing a victim card. And that is a trope. This, if there is something that repeats in every story, it is this aspect of it, whether the man is a victim or if he is playing a victim card. A lot of times there are also men who get stuck between two women in stories. So but there is one line of argument that keeps repeating in the book, where the man says, "You are lying there like a corpse, a dead body." For when asked for his reason to remarry or to divorce the woman, the men here speak as if they are entitled to something, as if a pampered kid is crying for a chocolate he was promised. These men act as if only they are entitled to satisfaction in bed, and they just don't happen to understand what happens to a woman after multiple pregnancies, and they blame it on them, saying, "You are lying there like a corpse, a dead body." So I will read out an excerpt from the page 57, where I was really blown by this man's argument of how he is not getting what he is entitled. So this is about this guy Yakub, who wants to divorce his first wife and remarry. So, but Yaqub was not in a state to listen. This woman, she had made his life hell. Woman here is the first wife. Like feces stuck to the feet. She was the devil who destroyed him by putting the responsibility of those three girls on him, when all he wanted was to find happiness in the lap of his new wife, and if a baby was born, if a baby boy was born, to have an heir to his auto rickshaw. She was the demon troubling him, Pavam. That Gafur, Idris, Nazir, all of them have two wives and are having fun, but none of their wives are causing trouble like this. They have quietly gone to their maternal homes, or else they are working as coolies or something. This bitch has not only troubled me for 2 years, but has now climbed the steps of the mosque even. She, her, Yaqub burned with uncontrollable anger even in that cold. Lay, if you who squats to pee has this much arrogance, how much arrogance should I, who stands to piss, have? He screamed in his very dignified manner. And when you only read this paragraph, you feel sad for Yaqub, because every man in the mohalla is getting two wives, a baby boy, and everything, but Pavam, he is the only one suffering. But is that the case? You know, a friend of mine once told me that feminism is not born because of disappointment in men, but because of disappointment in fellow women. And a lot of life experiences lately had made me understand that it is true. And this book once again kind of shows you how that happens, because a lot of times women don't stand up for women in their own families, and they unconsciously support the internalized patriarchy just for blood and their own comfort. and and yeah, this book may not change the families we come from, but this book helps at least the individual in us to understand the complex and complicated family dynamics, and whether the men in our families are the victims or if they are playing the victim cards. So read this book for that reason. And also recently, when me and my friend Shreyas were discussing about a story I have written. It is a story, it is a marriage story, and he told me that every word in a marriage becomes important. Every word you say in a marriage becomes important, because you may say something today and it will stay there for 10 years like that, and it may come up in one argument 10 years later. And you know, this book is always not about bad marriages, but it's also about good marriages that get stuck in conflict because of this power dynamics. And you know, one of the reason, the fourth reason you have to, you know, read this book is for this, you know, as to how the how the dynamics in marriage differ because of situations, and you know, and how the man and the woman, both the partners in the marriage, know each other weaknesses and how they use it against each other, and you know, and how they are aware that they are using it and they still use it to get what they want. And yeah, this makes it very interesting, as you know, it is almost like watching Noah Baumbach's, I think, I don't know if I got the name right, no, Noah Baumbach's marriage story. It is almost like watching that film in a South Indian setting. And yeah, and the last and the fifth point about, you know, and the fifth reason why you have to read this book is the beauty of the language, the beauty of the translation. I don't read Kannada, so I don't know how the text sounded in its original language, but Deepa Bhasthi here has done an amazing job in translating this book into English, into accented Indian English. It is almost the first time or one of the very few times where I had the experience of reading Indian English. Maybe Cobalt Blue, maybe Kiran Nagarkar. These are the few authors I read previously who made me feel like I am reading an Indian English book, and this is one that book where it feels like, though it's in English, it feels like an Indian language, and that's the beauty of this book. It is very interestingly translated, and it is very accessible. It is you understand a lot of things that happening. These two women, the author and the translator, they both come from Karnataka, and these stories are about our own very people, and which are narrated in a very interesting way. And yeah, I think no, you should read this book for all these reasons. The first one being, the story is not about the woman you expect it to be. The story begins somewhere and goes somewhere. And second, the stories will help you understand family dynamics and how envy and jealousy are the reason the power dynamics in family happen, and how, and as I said, our hook line is the third reason, and also the fourth reason is being, you understand marriages better as to how words affect marriage, and how the dynamics are between a man and wife, and of course the language in the end. And yeah, I am done with the video, and I don't think I have anything else to add, but except that this is the summer time. The heat is too much outside, and the best thing to do is buy this book and get a sharbat and read, read, read. Thank you. Thanks a lot. This is Tapasi, and see you in the next video. Thank you.